I'm DeShannon Levin, and I'm doing a video reflection of the book Creatively Productive by Lisa Johnson. It's essential skills for tackling time wasters, clearing the clutter, and succeeding in school and life. I did this as an online book study with the Southern Ohio Educational Service Center. It was one of our extensions of learning. We were able to get either CEUs, continuing education units, or you could get credit through Ashland University for graduate hours. So anytime I can get hours, number one, for free if I just want CEUs, or number two, for a very low price for those extra credits to bump up my salary, and especially if it has to do with a book, I'm in. This particular book covers quite a bit of technology, and it was technology that I was easily able to incorporate into my classes. When I started teaching about 25-ish years ago, I was in the English classroom for I think about 3 years, and then I went back and got my master's in library science, and I have been in the library for the last 20-ish years. And then this is my first year back in the classroom after over 20 years, so a bit of a learning curve there. Some things have changed. So I really appreciated the techniques that Lisa Johnson put out there, and there were some things that I was easily able to already see how they were going to work with what I was already doing in the classroom. We are a school that each student has their own Chromebook. So they do have that technology already at their fingertips. But even though everybody has a Chromebook, I've learned very quickly that not everybody is on the same skill level with being able to use it and tackle some of those common problems like managing your digital content that's already out there, how to find their documents, how to save their documents, where to put them, how to manipulate Google Classroom. So there are some other things in there that while I've been going through the book, hey, I've been reading this book, she's mentioning this, and I'm thinking that this might apply to you too. I am very interested in helping my students succeed, not only in English, but also trying to manage their online data, being successful with how English and how all this technology goes across the curriculum. I want them to be successful learners, not just successful English students. I doubt that there's been a day this year that I haven't said, please set your device aside and limit your distractions. And she goes over quite a bit of how to try and tackle those time wasters, clear out all the clutter that's there, and be able to focus on what it is that you're doing. She talks a lot about goal setting too, which I started at the beginning of the year talking about goal setting. So this has really helped me focus and hone in on some things that I didn't think about, the fact that I probably should have said those out loud, or I should have written those into their agenda for whenever we do transition to our remote learning. We have been in person most of the school year, but we have done some remote learning. And so, and I've had a lot of students who've been quarantined from time to time. And there have been a lot of days where students are out and we just continue on with the classroom. So everything has to be on that online agenda. All of my work has to be accessible from home. And this has really helped me see how to get all of that in one place and get it organized. I was lucky to be one of the first, I believe it was 5 people who signed up to take the class, so I did get the book for free. And it's one that after I've read it, I wouldn't have even minded paying for this one. I have notes all over it. I highlighted, I underlined, I have tabs everywhere, and then I made notes on my Google Docs so that I would easily be able to get back to the information. In addition to that, Lisa Johnson also has her own website and social media. She's everywhere out there. And most of the things that she talks about in here are hyperlinks, so you can easily get to them. I've shared several of those with my kids. The online portfolio especially, we've already done some things, and I had talked to them about creating a portfolio. So it was really nice. I like the way she had her set up, so I was able to just share that in Google Classroom with them. And then we've been trying to manipulate that as we've been going along the last week or so. It's a nice place where they can create some exemplars and add those links in there. We talked at the beginning of the year, we created a very generic list of their accomplishments, honors, and things like that, like sports, things that they take place, that they take part in throughout the year. So then when it comes time to do their college applications, do scholarship applications, or anything else, they can go, oh, here's things that I can pull from. Here are some things that I've already done. Here's some examples of my work. Here are maybe some things that I can use to then hone in and write about, or I can write my essays about. So I have already been working with them on that, but I really like the way that she had hers set up in that document. So they still have the document that I gave them that is super generic, and then I shared the one that she has, and we've been working with that about the last week or so. So in this particular class, You had reflection questions each week that you would respond to, and then people in the class would respond back to you, and then I responded, on some of theirs. So that was one part of it. And then at the end, there are several different activities that you can do to gain either the CEUs or if you're trying to get the credits. And here is my picture of my sketch note. I thought that was pretty interesting. I'm not real crazy about drawing. I am a visual person, but it's still visual, like being able to take notes, not visual in drawing icons and things. So I struggled a little bit on that one, but I broke out the 6 chapters, added some icons in there, and put some of the really major points from each of the chapters. So that was interesting. And then again, I'm incorporating this into my class because we had already done a number of lessons where we took notes. But after I saw this, I encouraged them to do a one-pager, and I told them that they could break that up however they wanted to. They Googled what a one-pager looked like, and several of them did put some graphics in there. So I thought that was interesting. I'm going to try and be a little bit more flexible with how they take notes. One of the other major things that she had in her book that I incorporated into my class was writing a letter to your fear. She had an example, so I had already talked to my kids about taking the class so that I was easily able to drop things in every day that I thought that they might be able to use. So I'd already talked to them about that. So then I read that little section on how she went to a conference and she did have the activity where you had to write a letter to your fear of something. She wrote hers to her fear of failure. Then I read her letter to them, and then we talked a little bit about what are some of the fears that we would write letters to, and then they wrote their letters. There was one that was so good. By the end of the day, I asked that student if I was allowed to share it without his name, and he said absolutely. So I read that then the next day to all of my classes, and they were really moved by the letter. His letter was to his fear of depression, and it was phenomenal. So I think that might have spurred a couple of them on to put a little bit more work into their letter. And then the following day, they grouped up. They shared only the part of their letter that they were comfortable with. And some of them then turned around and did volunteer to read their whole letter. So we had some great responses to that. It was really good writing. It's definitely going to be one that several of them, I think, will pick as one of their exemplars to put in their portfolio for the end of the year. And it was just a great experience. I will definitely do that every year. We also then wrote on the board all of our topics, what people wrote to the fear of. Some of them were very lighthearted, so I don't want to make it sound like that we were all super serious the whole time. One kid's was to the fear of his mother, and he made it into a humorous one, and it was really creative. Several of them have, fears of snakes or spiders or whatever. So those were in there too. And then it was really good. Now we do journals every day, most days, about 10 minutes or so. So they're used to writing very honestly. So this was just a nice extended activity for them to do that. I teach with 2 other girls in the English department. We are all planner people. We have been for several years, and at the beginning of the year, of course, we talked about which planner we had decided to use this year for our personal lives and also for our school days. So it was interesting that when this book came up, I went and talked to them. We have a common plan time in the morning where we're able to kind of touch base, see what everybody's doing, ask any questions if you need feedback. And while I was doing this online class, it was very common for me to say, hey, here's what she's talking about, or have you heard about this app? Does anybody else use Notability? Has anybody tried doing the sketch notes before? So that was really nice to get that kind of feedback. One of the main things that we talked about again was the goal setting. I'm teaching freshmen, all of the freshmen, and then the general seniors. So I did several times check in with them to see where they were at, what they did throughout the year. They talked about goal setting, what would be helpful for me to mention to the kids that, hey, this might be something you want to set for a goal. Here are some small steps to get there. I really like how she has the discussion of the goal setting in her book where she talks about long-term goals and short-term goals. Let's break those long-term goals down into SMART goals and achievable goals and into smaller steps. And then how to stay on track of those goals. So again, I've already talked with my kids about that several times. Then when the book came along, I went back and revisited that. And when we come back from break, I have a longer lesson where we're going to go back and pull all that together to help them get a little bit more organized. Find a place to put it in their digital documents or in that online portfolio so that they can revisit it after this year. So that those long-term goals are not something that at the end of the year we're just like, I know that I have no idea where I wrote that. So I'm going to try and help them find that landing place for their digital documents. One of the things that instantly surprised me about the book is when she did so many name droppings of the planner people, like online planning groups, the online or the authors who have a lot of things online, like Austin Kleon. I love his work. His newsletter is totally worth it. It's an email newsletter that you get in your email, and it's totally worth it. Either just to skim down, and if you have more time to click on it, he always has great blog posts, and his books are fabulous. So I was really impressed that that was in there. I don't know as much about the, is it the Einstein one? No, sorry, the Leonardo da Vinci one. I don't know as much about that. I've heard of it, but I don't know as much about that. So that's another one that I want to look more into. Definitely want to look more into the sketch notes. I know that there are some books out there that the links have been shared, so I'm going to check into that. And the final thing that I would say that she had talked about, and I again gave it as an option with my students, was an extension of a learning to do one of the personality tests. We have already done some career assessments. We had talked about some personality tests, but I didn't really share it with them to take. My students were interested in the Enneagrams back in January. We had talked about it, but we didn't actually put it out there in class. We just kind of talked about it. So on one of the remote days, one of their extensions of learning was to pick one of the extra career assessments or the extra personality tests. And many of them chose the 16 personalities, which was a big one. And then they did some reflections on that, and we've talked about that in a group setting too. So that's another one that I will do every year. My kids had great reflections on what they got out of those personality tests. And then again, we linked them into our goals, and we linked them into how this might be a good indicator that we're making some good choices on what our careers might be, what that best fit is. So in conclusion, I highly recommend the book for educators. Anyone who's working with young adults, not necessarily even educators, I think you would really benefit from the book. Her technology, it is a bit overwhelming. There's so many apps she talks about. It's going to cost me more than the cost of the class to do this, because all of this stuff that's in here, I'm like, I really need to update my iPad. I need an Apple Pencil. I need to be able to make some of these more visual notes. I know that that's something that I'm lacking in the classroom this year. Everything is online, but I do everything in Google Docs and then push it over. Everything's hyperlinked, but there's no visual going on there. I might, throw a picture in there or something, but very old school. So after reading this and thinking about all the different ways that kids are visual learners and that they might take more visual notes, the sketch notes and things like that, I'm going to invest in an upgrade on my iPad and the Apple Pen and try and incorporate some of those. So again, highly recommend it. If you've read Creatively Productive, I would love to hear what you have to say about it. Shoot me a message. I'm on social media, and I will put all that information below. And check out some of my other book review videos.